It's your favorite day, AAA Wednesday, which stands for Ask Alyssa Anything. This is my weekly Q&A where I'm popping into the comments and responding to all your questions, concerns, inquiries about writing, editing, publishing, and everything in between. I love hearing what all of you are working on and want to help you get through any of those obstacles, so keep the questions coming. Just 2 pieces of housekeeping before we dive in. Number 1, if you're new here, welcome. Every week, in addition to these Q&As, I also do deep dive videos into specific aspects of the publishing industry, or I talk about a writing technique that you can use today in your work in progress. So if any of that interests you, go ahead and subscribe so you won't miss out. And number 2, if you like these sessions, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. It's an easy way to let me know you're liking them, and it really helps out my channel a lot. Thank you so much. Here's the first question today. In my novel, I have the enemies to lover trope going on. How do I show the reader that the heroine is falling for the hero without actually saying it? He had been so thoughtful and caring this past week, she had begun to believe it could be possible to love him despite their differences. Isn't that just telling instead of showing? One of the most common pieces of fiction writing advice you will hear is show, don't tell. While in many cases, this is great advice, and it's a good idea to err on the side of showing the reader things rather than explicitly telling them, there are moments where a little bit of telling here and there is totally fine and actually goes a long way toward helping the reader understand what your character is going through and who they are. So in general, if you're finding that you need to tell the reader something, maybe telling us how a character feels or telling us something about their backstory, don't feel like you can't do it just because it's telling rather than showing. If there is an easy way to show that information to us rather than tell us, maybe try that. But if it needs to be told, sometimes it needs to be told, and the reader will be grateful for it. The issue with telling really becomes when all we're getting is the narrator divulging information to us in that way, and we're not seeing anything in the story. But as long as you're not overdoing it, a little bit of telling here and there is totally effective. Now, in the case of this question, you want to know how to show the reader that the character is falling for this other character. One option is to just tell the reader how that character feels, but there are many ways to show that to the reader instead. How does the character physically react whenever that other character that they like are nearby? Do they get clammy, nervous? Does their heart start to race? Do they start to feel giddy inside? When they're not with that character, do they long to be with them? Are they thinking about them? Those are all ways to show the reader that this character is falling for this other character without explicitly saying it. And I'm sure there are many other examples that you can find that you can incorporate in your story. Think about your own experiences if you've fallen for someone and try to incorporate some of those in the story. Here's the next question. Hi, Alyssa. I recently encountered several writers commenting online that the blurb used for a query letter should be significantly more detailed than, say, the persuasive writing on a back cover copy, including spoilers in the query. I was directed to a 2018 blog link by a YA writer espousing this. That advice is the polar opposite of what I've encountered in the past, which usually advises enticing the agent in the query and saves spoilers for the synopsis. In fact, I've often heard your query blurb may even directly be repurposed for back cover copy. Is this a new or rising trend in querying, or just misguided advice? In my experience in the industry and working with authors who are querying today, the blurb in your query letter should sound more like jacket or online description copy than a synopsis where you are giving away all of the details of your plot. I've worked with many authors recently who took this approach with their queries and got representation. So as far as I know, that is what most agents are looking for in the plot blurb. If an agent requests a synopsis separate from the query letter, that is where you will detail the plot in full, including all of the spoilers. So in general, I would go with that approach. That said, look closely at the agent's submission requirements. If they specifically say, give me a synopsis of the whole book in the query letter, then go ahead and do that. I personally don't know of any agents who are asking for that, but you will likely find agents who are asking for the full synopsis either as a separate field in a query form or as a separate attachment with your query package. The purpose of the query letter is really to entice agents to want to read those sample pages, and that more stylized movie trailer type blurb will do that work more effectively than a plain language synopsis. Here's the next question. Is there a best practice when it comes to asking authors for a blurb? This is interesting because we just talked about blurbs in the other capacity, which is what I call the plot blurb in the query letter, but this is talking about the other definition of blurbs, which are the quotes that you see from other authors on the cover or online description copy of a published book. An author would typically ask other authors for blurbs once they are somewhere in the publishing pipeline. So this would often happen after you get a book deal with a traditional publisher, or if you're trying to get a blurb and you're self-publishing, once you already have the manuscript finalized and you're working on your marketing and publicity plans. As far as best practices, I recommend just being polite and gracious when you are reaching out to authors to blurb your book. Once you become a published author, and if you have a good amount of success with your sales, it's likely that you will be asked to blurb other authors' books. And it can quickly become overwhelming. You might find yourself inundated with dozens of requests to blurb books, and you frankly won't have the time to read all of those books and provide quotes. So because of that, I recommend being just very polite in reaching out to authors to blurb your book, and don't take it personally if they say no. It honestly is just a time and workload issue. Authors who are blurbing books are doing this for free on their own time. So if you understand that and come at the request with an understanding that there's no guarantee, then you will be in good shape. If you know you're enjoying my tips and insights, you can get even more delivered straight to your inbox by checking out my newsletter website, chapter-break.com. Every week, I'm either publishing an interview with a literary agent or a best-selling author, or I'm doing a deep dive into a specific editorial issue from my background as a developmental editor. By signing up to Chapter Break, you will get my bonus story self-assessment worksheet. This is a fun resource I designed to help you see what's working really well in your story and what you can improve on the next draft. I know it can be so hard to see it for yourself, so I've tried to make it easy to do so. The links to download your free story self-assessment and check out Chapter Break are in the description. Here's the last question on deck today. Is there a time limit on revise and resubmits? After reading my full manuscript, an agent I really admire says she likes the story and sees potential, but wants a little more complexity, and gave detailed notes on how and where to incorporate this into the plot. She told me to take my time revising and not to rush, but I'm worried that if I take too long, she might lose enthusiasm and interest. Do not rush a revision just because you want to get it back to the agent who requested revisions as soon as possible. I promise you, the agent has a lot of other stuff going on, and they're honestly not waiting for you to resubmit the manuscript to them in any specific time frame. They would much rather you take the time you need to develop the manuscript, address the feedback, and make it the strongest possible version of itself than you rushing the process to get back in their inbox. Because as we know, agents are very overwhelmed when it comes to queries and full requests, and they're trying to get through them as fast as they can, but are often backlogged. So if you need to take another month, 2 months, even 6 months, frankly, that's not likely going to make a huge difference on the agent's end. Unless, of course, they tell you they want it in a specific time frame, but that's unlikely. Revisions, especially of the developmental variety, can take a lot of time and energy and effort. So spend your time really digesting the feedback and really making sure that this version of the draft is very strong. That's going to give you the best shot of presenting it to the agent, and they would much rather you have a polished version than a shoddy version that doesn't really address the feedback. So I really wouldn't worry about taking too much time on revise and resubmits. Agents know how long revising and writing takes, and they are going to be ready to receive the new manuscript when you have it, and they will look forward to it. That's all we had time for today, and if you have a question you'd like to ask, drop it in the comments here and it will be added to my queue for my next session. Before you head out, don't forget your free story self-assessment worksheet and my newsletter website. Those links are in the description. And give me a thumbs up if you're liking these Q&As, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on my next video. Thanks so much for watching, and happy writing.